All right, we are live. I wanted to take the opportunity to welcome everyone to the Global Virtual Tuesdays Together. For those of you who are new, Rising Tide is a community of small business owners, independent freelancers, service providers, creative entrepreneurs who unite in the spirit of community over competition. It's hundreds of local chapters led by extraordinary volunteers, co-leaders, and chairs. It's a Facebook group with over 70,000 community members. And there are also educational resources that are released almost daily, including blog posts, webinars, templates, monthly downloadable guides, and more, all completely free to our community. Rising Tide believes in an empowered creative economy that will change the world. By elevating the voices of independent small business owners, sharing their stories, and building a thriving community, we can support you in your pursuit of a sustainable livelihood. In 2020, when coronavirus shut down our in-person meetings, we decided to take our monthly meetup online. And with an overwhelmingly positive response, we've continued to do it again and again, providing accessible education every event, every month. Today, we are excited to welcome Braden Drake as our guest, helping us all know what it means to protect your business. Before I go into a proper introduction, I want to make sure that all of you know that we run a little contest when we host these events. To say thank you for joining us live and to add some excitement to the day, we're giving away a $50 Amex gift card to an attendee. All you have to do is tag Rising Tide Society and at Braden Adam Drake on Instagram stories while you're tuning in. And you can share how you're watching, how you're listening, a learning moment, and maybe the most quotable moment. Any of those are good options. If you share them on Instagram, I will put the at in the chat so that you can tag them. You'll be automatically entered to win. So without further ado, we are excited to welcome Braden as our guest expert today. Braden is a California licensed attorney and tax professional. His tagline is "Your gay best friend, here to help you get your legal, tax, and financial shit legit." Braden works primarily with service-based businesses, creative small business owners through his signature program, Profit RX. And if you are local to the San Diego area, you might also recognize Braden as one of our North County San Diego chapter leaders. With that, I'll hand it over to Braden. Please welcome him to the webinar.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. If you didn't already see, I posted in the chat. I would love for you all to share with us where you're tuning in from and also what your business is. I am very familiar with Rising Tide Society. As was just mentioned, I'm the co-leader of our San Diego chapter. I've been pretty active in Tuesdays Together and RTS now for about 3 years. And I actually credit Rising Tide in large part with the success that I've had in my business. I kind of got my start speaking to about 9 different local groups when we had this legal topic, I think back in 2018. So if my math is right, this is about the 12th time I've done a talk for Rising Tide, and I'm super, super excited. Okay, so we have people here from Maryland, Pennsylvania. I think I saw Alaska earlier, Oregon. Very, very exciting. Laura, I also saw your question. If you don't mind, Laura, I'm going to have you post your question in the Q&A. In the Q&A function, so that way we remember to circle back to it later. Okay, who else do we have here? New York, Pasadena. Hi, Penny, Christy, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. All right, so without any further ado, I'm going to do a screen share of my slides. So let me get those open. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you can see the slides. Oh, it looks like they're there. That's pretty simple. Okay, so what we're talking about today is legally protecting your small business. So what I'll encourage you all to do as we go through this is if you have a question, if you already know that you have a question that's kind of like a little bit random or very, very specific, you can post that in the Q&A function. So then that way at the end, when we do like free for all open Q&A, we can circle back to that. But if you have questions as we're going, like about the slide we're on, just post those in the chat because I'll kind of be looking at the chat as we go along. And then that helps us have a dialogue. It's a little bit more fun than me just giving you a rote presentation. Kathy, I typically don't give out my slides But that's something that I'll talk to the leadership team about when we're done. So stay tuned on that. Okay. So legally protecting your small business. First of all, I want to let you all know that I have a lot of freebies and resources on my website, including a free download called The Legal Layers of Protection. It's www.bradendrake.com if you all want to hop over there and download that. That'll give you hyperlinks to a lot of the things that I'm sharing. And also it'll give you like a more, I guess instead of the slides, it'll give you like a more written text of what we're talking about today. So super helpful. Okay. So hello, my name is Braden. Just a little bit more information about myself. I'm a California licensed attorney. I also have a master's degree in tax law. So that makes me a small business and tax attorney. I'm also a small business owner and course creator. I like to use this fun photo. My photographer, Crystal Lilly, shout out to Crystal if she's here or watching later. She does all my brand photos and she's phenomenal. But I asked her to borrow one of her cameras when we did our photo shoot, because I have some copy on my website that says when I look at a fancy DSLR camera, it's utterly baffling to me. There's so many different buttons and settings. I have no idea how to work it. And the reason why I share that is because I want to let you all know that you are creatives. You know how to do these things. It's a very specific skill set. It's a learned skill set. It's a talent. I'm trained in law and tax, which is also a learned skill set, right? We're all providing the services that we learn. So if you don't feel like you have a good grasp on your taxes or legalities, it's totally understandable because you likely haven't been taught them before, right? We all are going to use our strengths. Rebecca asks, is that master's for all states or specifically California? So a master's in tax law is generally federal because it's going to be on IRS US based tax. So it's a good question. Okay, so where we're going to go today, I'm going to be talking about the legal layers of protection. I'm also going to be talking about stages in business. So we'll review what are some different stages in business from my perspective, and then what are the next best steps for you as far as legal protection goes based on the stage of business you're in. So this is the best way I can kind of present you this information to make it specific to where you are in business without being super, super general. So let's get started. Each and every business is unique. It's all about how many layers of legal protection you need to keep your business out of hot water, or alternatively, how many you need to sleep well at night. So while I'm going through this, post in the chat what you think some of the legal layers of protection are, and we'll start to talk about it. So we'll see if you collectively can guess all of them. I like to give an analogy when I talk about the layers of protection. You likely have seen me on video. Right now, I'm in this like really, really puffy fleece sweatshirt. And that's because I am in a home office that's actually a converted garage. It is not heated, which means I need a few extra layers of warmth to stay like nice and protected. And so when I think about layers of protection, I think about clothing, right? And the amount of clothing we need is going to be based on the temperature outside, definitely where we live, what the season is. There's a variety of factors. Just like in business, there's a variety of factors that determine how many legal layers of protection we need. Okay. So we have contracts, great, terms of service, insurance, contracts, LLC, copyright, trademark, professional CPA. That's not something I'd consider like a layer of protection, but definitely a good idea. Separating your business and personal assets. We've got, I think we may collectively have all of them. Let's go to the next slide and see. Okay, so contracts, insurance, entities. So that would be our LLC. IP or intellectual property is the copyright and trademarks that someone mentioned. And then compliance is kind of our last one. This is all the stuff we have to do. I always say that paying your taxes is like a layer of protection. It's not really a legality, but since I also do tax consulting, I can't help but mentioning that as well. So these are our layers. Now let's talk about stages of business. And if you feel comfortable, as I'm highlighting these, drop in the comments and let us know what stage of business you self-identify with. So stage one, you're maybe in your first year of business. You probably don't have any prior business experience, and you may not be expecting to gross more than $25,000. And my audience, I've done a quiz as an email list builder before, and typically about 30% of the people that follow me fall into stage one. Makes sense. They're just getting started. They need help with their legalities. Stage two, you're maybe a few years in business. You're in this $25,000 to $75,000 range. You maybe have a contractor or two. Stage three, 75 to 200,000. You maybe have several contractors in your business. And then in stage four, you're above that. At that point, it's probably time to hire employees, build a team, have associates, all this good stuff. And the reason why I specifically give revenue levels here is because some of the things we're going to be talking about, specifically tax considerations, are going to be based on your revenue, right? And also, when we're talking about revenue, you're typically not going to be like running out of time to do certain things until you have enough clients, which translates to particular revenue markers. Okay, so we have an interesting mix here. Lots of stage 1 and 2, one stage 4 person, and then we have a couple people who said they're between stage 2 and stage 3. Beautiful. All right. So here's what I often hear from people in stage 1. Super, super common. They'll tell me things like, I don't know what I don't know. I would Google things, but I don't even know what to type into Google to begin searching the legalities for my business, especially the tax stuff. This one people don't really tell me, but it's implied. I'm afraid of my own mailbox. Like, I'm afraid I'm going to get hate mail from the IRS. I don't look at an orange. I don't want to go to jail for tax fraud. Don't worry. That's not something that you have to worry about. And they'll say, I just wish I could focus on what it is that I love to do. So if you're a stationer, you just want to do stationary. I don't think I said that right, but you know what I mean. Photographer, I just want to take photos. Most of us don't get into business to do tax and law unless you're me. That's literally what I did, right? Okay. So this is kind of a confusing concept, but I want us all to wrap our heads around this. There's things that we legally must do, right? It's required. There's things that are not legally required, but that we definitely should do. Then there's things that we probably should do, and the things that might be a good idea. People in stage 1, I like to focus on the essentials, which are those first 2 things we legally have to do, and the things that like everyone's going to tell us we must do. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, luckily it's not too complicated. Let me know if this is relatable for you all. I know when I started my business, especially when we go to these talks all the time, we hear people tell us about like how important Pinterest is and Instagram and TikTok, and we need to have an email list and we need to think about SEO. And then we have people telling us about taxes and financial planning. It can be a lot if we're taking it all in at once, right? And we think we have to do all these things at once. But at the end of the day, it's kind of our responsibility to filter all that information and say, this is what I'm going to do now. This is what I'm going to do next quarter. And this is maybe what I'll focus on next year. So I'm going to try to help you do some of that sorting now so you don't get super overwhelmed as we're going through this. So what are the essentials, right? We already talked about the layers. These are what I call the essential layers, the things everyone must do. You got to have a contract, right? Non-negotiable. You got to have a contract. You need to have insurance. That's what I call the essential layers of protection. And then number 3 is kind of a bonus. You have to pay your taxes. All right. We all owe taxes. We have to pay taxes. We don't like to pay taxes, but we need to do it. Okay. So those are our essentials: contracts, insurance, and taxes. So I have a few notes on each of these. By the way, I'm kind of flying through these slides. So if you have any questions as we're going, please feel free to put them in the chat box. So a few notes on contracts. Most of us here are service-based businesses, so we need client service agreements. Those typically should cover the who, what, when, where, and sometimes the why. So if you're a wedding photographer, we want to know who are the parties. Well, you're the wedding photographer. What's your company name? Who's the client? What's the client's legal name? This contract is by and between Braden Drake LLC, here and after photographer, and Braden Drake, here and after client. Silly example, but you get the picture. When are you providing the services? So what's the wedding date? Very important that you define that in the contract. The photographer agrees to shoot. Well, I know that we tend not to use the word shoot in a legal context anymore. But you provide the services on October 1st, 2022, here and after the wedding date. What are you providing? That's your scope of services. So you're going to have number of hours of coverage. Some people like to specify the number of images they're going to give. I don't really like that. We like to, keep our expectations low and over deliver. That's what I'm a fan of. But think about the what, the where. Where's the venue, right? Where are you providing the services? And sometimes a why is helpful as well. So that's not required, but let's say, for example, you have a very strict cancellation agreement. Sometimes it doesn't hurt to add a sentence of the reason why we have this cancellation policy is because if you cancel, this is a date that we've already blocked off that we cannot reschedule, and we will be out X amount of money. This is why we have strict cancellation. Okay. Contracts also make you look more professional. So we should all have a contract. I know especially newer business owners, they feel awkward asking people to sign contracts. But my perspective is if I hire someone for a service, specifically if I'm paying good money for it, and they do not send me a contract, I am going to question their professional. I'm gonna worry, does this person really know what they're doing? Am I hiring the right person? They don't have a contract. How long have they been in business? Those are the questions that pop up in my mind. Of course, I'm an attorney, so I might look at it a little bit differently. But I do think sending a highly polished contract through a CRM like HoneyBook, which of course we love, makes you look very professional. Contracts are also going to help you get and stay paid. So you got to have a payment schedule. Super important. We could talk about payment terms all day long. If you have questions about that, let me know. We can get into specifics. Now, if you need some contracts help, this is something I just started offering on Friday. I created something I'm calling the Contract Vault, and it has all my contracts, photography contracts, planning contracts, floral contracts, cancellation agreement, postponement agreement, all sorts of stuff in one place for $30. If you want to access that, it's www.bradendrake.com/contract vault. So go check it out. I just emailed about it yesterday, and we've sold like 72 of them so far, which is very exciting. I'm just really tired of reading terrible contracts. I know a lot of you planners here can probably relate. You probably read a lot of them too. Okay. Oh, Rebecca says, I started feeling like a pro when I started sending contracts. That's awesome. Okay, so insurance. Next thing we're talking about is insurance. Insurance policies for general liability typically start around $50 a month, but most of you also are going to want to add professional liability insurance as well. All right, so general liability, professional liability, very important. The best tip I can give you for insurance is to get a referral, a recommendation from someone who knows your industry. So this is a great thing to post in the Rising Tide Society Facebook group. If you want to start a dialogue there, that'd probably be a great place. You know, you could say, I'm a floral designer in Atlanta, Georgia. I need a recommendation for insurance. Someone can definitely help you. If you have specific questions about insurance, I did this really fabulous 50-minute podcast episode. A swear warning for you all. My podcast is called Unfuck Your Biz with Braden, asterisk for the U. Back on episode 189, I interviewed a college friend of mine who now is a full-time insurance broker and asked him all of the questions I get all the time. So you can go tune into that. Okay. Oh yeah, Danny said the non-www version of my website doesn't work. Yes, Danny, that was recently brought to my attention. I have to fix that. So, and if any of you are trying to get to my website, you got to put in the W's first. All right. I think I have an article that I read on how to get that situated. I just got to do that first. All right. Justina said, is there any time when a check this box to agree to terms of agreement can replace a contract for a service like a consultation? Yes, it can. So we generally call that web terms of service. So especially if you're ever online shopping, you're going to check a box that says, I agree. If you're buying digital downloads, super common. I sell the Contract Vault. If you go to buy that, there's going to be a checkbox as well. I typically don't recommend that for larger contracts. So if you're providing a 1,000-2,000 and up service, you want to have them go through a more formal CRM, just so they're like really reading it. Typically the check a box thing, no one's actually reading that. Also, can you all see my video? Because I'm like super fuzzy. I don't think my camera is auto-focusing. Maybe not the most primary concern I should have right now, but the slides look good. Okay. Jillian says, I need insurance recommendations. Yeah, if any of you have recommendations, you can post them in the chat box. That might be helpful. Yes, I'm super blurry. Okay, it's okay. We'll call it like impressionist. It's an impressionistic art piece here as I'm presenting. We'll autofocus the camera later. Again, you guys, there's so many settings. I have a Sony DSLR camera. I'm gonna have to like watch 10 YouTube videos to figure that out if it doesn't fix itself. Okay, so the next thing is creating a valid sole prop. If you don't already, so here's the thing. If you haven't formed an LLC or what I call a formal business entity, like an LLC and S-corp, then you have a sole proprietorship, unless you have a business partner. Then you have a general partnership. Okay, that's the default. Most cities require you to have a business license. So I always like to say, if you don't have a business license, it just means you're an unlicensed sole proprietorship. We don't like that. I know some venues, other places will ask you for a copy of your business license to make sure that you're a professional, credentialed vendor or professional. All right. So you want to get your business license. That's typically through your city. You also want to look at other requirements. So do you need a DBA or a fictitious business name license? That's typically through the county. Does your state require anything? You definitely want to get an EIN or employment identification number through the IRS. Do not pay anyone to do that for you. It's free through the IRS website. It's pretty easy. You just do that on your own. Okay. Each license or application, I collectively call them licenses, has a different purpose. So something to watch out for. If you're curious to learn more about this, I have a really handy blog on my website called the Small Business Blueprint, and it takes you through like it's a 14-step blueprint of all these different licenses. Don't worry, you won't need all 14 of those things. So don't let the number freak you out. Okay. So, Victoria says, I use Hartford for my insurance, not sponsored. Good to know. You can check them out. Lauren says, I went through a home and car insurance company. They were really helpful. Awesome. Love it. Erie Insurance in Pennsylvania. All right. Christy says, I live outside of city limits. I called the city and they said I need to go through the county. I called the county and they said they don't issue business licenses. So what do you do? This is a pretty common, fairly common issue, Christy. I've heard this before. I just wouldn't worry about it. If you ever have someone who requests a business license from you, you can tell them what you just told me. Say, I don't have one for these reasons. Worst case scenario, if you ever run into a situation where you absolutely have to have a business license, you could probably just get one through that city. They're telling you that they don't require one, but if it's like $50, you could get one anyway. Okay. Susie is a fan of State Farm. Love it. Yeah, Mac. So is Mac your name? Let me know, or if it's just auto-filling a name for you. LegalZoom charges you $240 to get your EIN in your business license. I try not to shit on LegalZoom too much, but this is why I'm really not a big fan of their service. They overcharge for a lot of things and they skip over other things that you may need. I recorded a podcast titled Stop Paying for Bullshit, and that's mostly what I talked about. So you can all go tune into that. Yes, Jamie, umbrella policies are great. I think I chat about that in the podcast a little bit as well. Mac, got your name. Beautiful. And South Carolina people often confuse business license and retail license. So interesting. Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what the difference is, but I'm going to make an assumption. In California, in some cities, they have different business licenses for whether you work out of a home office or if you have a retail location. So if you operated a salon, you would get a different type of license. They're typically a lot more expensive. So check into that. I typically tell people if your business license is going to cost you more than, I don't know why I just air quoted cost. You can see my blurry fingers. But if your business license is going to cost you more than $70, around about there, I would make sure you're applying for the right one because you might be getting more of that retail license. AJ asked, how is business insurance different than liability insurance? So liability insurance is, those are kind of synonymous. Like you want business liability insurance, right? So a liability insurance is a particular type of policy. Business insurance is for a business. You want business liability and business general liability and business professional liability. Okay. Justina says, silly question, but I have an EIN. Do I have a business license? Those are separate. So EINs through the IRS, your business license will be through your city. Also was recommended to go to the city, but they seemed confused. Why am I clueless? So if your city doesn't have a business license, then they may be confused because they're like, we don't know what that is. But just double check, do your due diligence. If you have any business friends within your jurisdiction, you can ask them about it. All right. Okay. Okay, I think we're caught up on the questions there. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so stage 2, we talked about, that was stage 1, right? So we talked about the basics. Stage 2, some things I hear pretty often, I'm growing, but am I growing in the right direction? How do I get off the WTF happened in my money hamster wheel? That's more of a cash flow thing. This is from an old slide. We're not going to talk about that as much today. And then people will wonder, okay, well, what other layers of protection do I need? Connie says, if the percentage is lower than $250, the LLC. Okay. Connie, I think I might be confused on your comment or question. So let me know. So sorry. You said your business license cost is based on either earnings or salaries, depending on what is larger. Got it. So that might be different based on your local jurisdiction. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the LLC. This is our next layer of protection. I like to think about LLCs as this magic bubble of protection. So the analogy I always give, and this is something that I write about in my book. So if you are a reader, I do have a book you can read, spend all of your free time reading about LLCs and legalities. I talk in there about this magic bubble of protection. So I think about Glinda in The Wizard of Oz, if you can all visualize what I'm talking about, when she floats down in her magic bubble. But take Glinda out of the bubble, otherwise this gets fairly morbid, and picture your business in there instead. And what we want to think about is ultimate worst case scenario, very unlikely to happen, but worst case scenario, you get sued, you default on a contract, really terrible things happen. And I want you to picture something representative of yourself representative of your business and that bubble. And what happens is if you get sued, they can kind of liquidate your business. Your business can explode. It all, goes to pieces. But the bubble contains everything on the outside from the shrapnel of that liability. So it contains everything within the business bubble, so to speak, and everything on the outside, your retirement, your car, your house, is protected. That's how an LLC operates. Okay. Now, it's not kind of like an ironclad protection. There are circumstances where someone can sue both your business and you personally. We won't get into the weeds, but this is the general idea of an LLC. Now, sole props and general partnerships, they provide no bubble of protection. Those are the default structures, but your formal entities like your LLCs and your corporations do. So this is an extra, I think about it as like extra insurance. Christy, you said you put a bunch of questions in the Q&A tab. No problem. We will get to those at the end when we open it up for regular Q&A. People will often ask me, well, what happens if I have multiple businesses? Well, think about it. Do you want all of your businesses within one bubble? So if one, you have an explosion from one, that puts your other one at risk because they're right beside each other, or you can separate them into different bubbles. So if you operate two totally separate businesses, we want to legally separate them as well. If you're offering different revenue streams within one business, then we'll typically put them together. This is a very advanced consideration because there are typically tax advantages to putting your businesses together, but legal advantages to separating them. So this is why typically we recommend that you have an attorney and a tax professional because they'll give you contradictory advice. Ultimately, you want to look at everything in the big picture. Also in stage 2, it might be time for a contractor agreement, an operating agreement, and meeting minutes. If you have an LLC, all 3 of those templates I also provide in my contract vault, and additional LLC compliance tasks. If you have an LLC, you likely need to do an annual report, annual statement of information, pay your franchise tax or your annual fee. I like to tell people to be very careful about filing their LLC through online filing platforms like LegalZoom and InkFile and all these places, because they just do the initial filing. They don't really tell you about all of these other aspects you need to do, like numbers 2 and 3. Here, I've seen disasters where I've had students of mine who owe multiple years in back franchise taxes, or they've had their LLCs dissolved for failing to put in their compliance things. Okay, so be careful there. All right, so stage 3, I'm kind of speeding up now a little bit, so I want to make sure we have a lot of time for Q&A. People in stage 3, their income's now pretty consistent, but they want to start to streamline, right? This is where you're like, okay, I'm starting to run out of time. This is a quality problem, though. I have a lot of clients. I love that, but I want to be able to make more, but I also don't have more time to work. So we need to streamline. And then shit, I'm paying a lot of taxes, very common scenario. And that's when and why we would look into doing an S-corp. So an S-corp is very important. An S-corp is not a type of legal structure. It's just a tax status. We can elect for our LLC or a corporation to be taxed as an S corporation. And this saves us taxes. And I'm going to kind of gloss over this very generally because, again, our topic this month is legal protection, not really tax strategy. And an S-corp is not a vehicle for legal protection. That's the LLC. It's a tax strategy. The way an S-corp saves us taxes, though, is we pay ourselves both a salary, a reasonable salary, and a distribution. And we do not pay self-employment taxes on our distribution. So if you're not already familiar, when we're self-employed, we all pay income taxes and we all pay self-employment taxes. Okay? Cool. We're going to skip that slide. Let me know, are you all still with me? I haven't seen a comment in a few minutes, so I want to make sure I didn't just drop off. I'm going to drink some coffee while I wait. Give me a thumbs up. We all feeling good? Yes. Okay. Oh, my autofocus came back in. How about that? Hi, everybody. You can see me now. Beautiful. Okay. So stage 3, it also may be time to get on payroll. All right. So once you form an S-corp, you got to get on payroll. Also look into a trademark as well and revisit your contracts. Once you're at this point, you've probably changed a lot about the way you're operating your business. You probably need to update your contract. Yes, Laura and I agree. Copy is magic. I'm on number 2 of the day. I'll probably do number 3 after this. Okay. Trademarks and copyrights, we can talk about a little bit. If you have questions, you can let me know. I don't consider myself an expert in those topics. I do not file trademarks. I actually hired a trademark attorney when I filed my trademark, but it's something I'm learning about right now. I'm reading a few trademark books just because, you know, it's fun. Yes, AJ. So we can, okay. So I'll pause. I'll talk a little bit more about S-corps. Let me go back. Let me go back a slide. And FYI, again, S-corps, I have a really good blog post on this. I talk about it on a lot of my podcasts. So if you are a stage 3 business owner and this feels relevant to you, go check those out for sure. The way an S corporation works is once you have an S corp, you're going to put yourself on payroll. And through payroll, you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary under the law. So let's assume, for example, your business makes $100,000 a year in gross revenue. Okay, $100,000, and you have $20,000 in expenses. Your profit would be $80,000. Okay, so $80,000 is your profit, and let's say you're going to pay yourself a salary of $60,000. That's your reasonable salary. You run that through payroll. On that salary, you're going to pay yourself income tax. You're going to withhold income taxes. And you also will be subject to self-employment taxes, which is a 15.3% tax. And that tax covers Social Security and Medicare. It's how we as self-employed people pay into those systems. So you pay both of those taxes on the $60,000. What profit do we have left over? This is the big kind of aha moment to figure out how S-corps actually work. We had $80,000 in profit. We pay ourselves $60,000 in salary. We have $20,000 left over. This is our total profit, or I call it our net income after salary in the business. On that $20,000, which we would distribute to ourselves through bank transfers, most likely, we call them profit distributions. That is subject to income tax. Okay, it's subject to income tax, but it is not subject to self-employment tax. So in other words, on any net income we have after salary in an S-corp, we save roughly a 15.3% tax. So if you're wondering, all right, am I ready for an S-corp? It's kind of a complicated question, but we have to think about, are you making enough money to pay yourself a reasonable salary and have at least typically I say $20,000 left over in profit, okay? Like I said, it's a complicated question. This is something I cover in great detail in my membership. I have like a bunch of Google Sheet calculators that we go through as a group and in my lessons to help people figure this out. We set up their LLCs and their S-corps and all of that. It's super fun. Okay. Christy says, Christy wants me to talk a little bit more, or Jamie wants me to talk a little bit more about trademarks. Jamie, let me know if you have a specific question about trademarks. What I'll let you all know now, very generally, is most common misconception is between copyrights and trademarks. Copyrights protects work. They protect works of authorship, okay? So your website copy, that's protected by copyright. Trademarks protect brand identifiers, so typically names and logos, okay? Shenandoah says, I always put aside 30% for taxes, federal and state. That's good. That's typically the benchmark I hear. For a lot of newer business owners, that's probably a lot more than you need to save. Also, we would differentiate between whether you're saving on gross or net, something to consider. Okay. So stage 4, some potential thoughts for stage 4 business owners. Things probably look great on the outside, but I'm really running out of time. I'd like to clone myself if I could. I need some higher level cash flow strategies, and I need to be more strategic. So once you're in stage 4, this is probably where you want to start hiring, right? If you're running out of time, you want to start hiring, and that you need to really consider a lot of things there. Also, a mistake I see in stage 4 is not owning the CEO role in the business. A lot of people, once they get to stage 4, they're making $200,000 or more. They're like, I'm going to outsource all this. I don't want to worry about it. But then we get into this issue of people hiring other people who are not really staying on top of things, but they don't really know enough about the law and tax consequences to know if those people are doing their jobs. And this is why I'm a big fan of education, because at the end of the day, you're the CEO of your own company. It's your responsibility to do the hiring and firing and make sure people are doing what they need to be doing. Okay. AJ says, still a bit confused with regard to S-corps. S-corps deal more with income and an LLC more with liability. Yeah. So again, an S-corp is not a type of entity. It's just a tax status. So you're going to form an LLC or a corporation to get liability protection. And then once your business is making enough money, once it financially makes sense, you can fill out an election. It's a IRS form 2553. You mail that into the IRS. And there are time windows for when you must do that. And that's when you say, hey, I want my LLC to get the benefits of subchapter S of the tax code. And that's when we would say that you have an S corporation. So again, LLCs, corporations, liability, S corps help you save taxes, possibly, if you're a good fit. Okay, and stage 4, it's time to really dig into hiring laws. Independent contractor law is something that I've talked a lot about through other platforms. I actually spoke, I think it was, Tuesdays Together, Temecula. I did a presentation on AB5, which is the independent contractor law here. That was a while ago. Improving systems, very important once you get to stage 4. And then also, if you haven't hired out your bookkeeping in stage 4, you probably want to do that. Susie says, is there an income threshold you recommend changing to an S-corp? So of course, as always, it depends. What I mentioned earlier is that you want to be $20,000 in profit above your reasonable salary. And I understand, Susie, you're probably thinking, well, what the hell does that mean? That could be anything. And exactly, it could be a pretty wide range of numbers. But typically you need to be profiting at least like $70,000 to $80,000 before we look into doing the S-corp. Maybe $60,000. It kind of depends. Again, there's lots of variables. The main thing is you have to really figure out what your reasonable salary would be. And again, that's something I help people with in my program if you all are interested in chatting about it. So how I can help you implement some of these tips, just sharing with you a little bit about my programs before we get to our general Q&A. Don't worry, it's like 2 slides. First of all, the contract vault, if you didn't already grab it, or if you didn't already look at it, I'll just post the link right here for you all. You can go check that out. And then my membership is called the Profit RX, and I call it your prescription to build a healthy and wealthy business. This is where I help people with their LLC formations, S-corp formations. You actually get access to the contract vault in there. We do twice weekly Q&As and co-working calls. And then if any of you have questions about that, you can DM me on Instagram. I'd be happy to chat about it. Speaking of, this is my Instagram. Please follow and say hello. Make sure that you tag both myself and HoneyBook. You can do a screenshot of your computer, like take a selfie, all sorts of fun things you could do. Okay. I had a question. Christy says, I don't have a partnership right now, but I'm thinking about it next year. Christy, partnerships, you want to be careful with partnerships, okay? Because once you have a partnership, first of all, you got to agree on everything with your partner. I'm kind of an independent person. I don't like to have to do that. But then also you are opening yourself up to liability from your partner. Oh, I see you had a question about that. You said, if you have a partnership, like a 2-person business, would that profit be after both salaries? Yes, that's correct. Justina says, is there a recording available from the AB5 presentation you're able to share? There is not. So used to be in our in-person meetings, we did not do any recordings. I think that's changing moving forward. But that's something, we can talk to the Rising Tide team about. But I do have a very, very thorough podcast episode. I'm going to have to go back, and if you DM me on Instagram, I could find a direct link for you. But I have like a 40-minute episode where I go into all the specific exemptions, carve-outs, and exceptions, pretty specifically for wedding professionals and event professionals. So if you fall into that industry, you'll find it super, super helpful. And I do have a very thorough blog post on that as well, where here, I'll post that. This should be the link to my blog post. Pretty simple. /AB5. Max says, I love your runs where you answer questions on Instagram. Yeah, so everyone, I used to do that a lot more. I used to do Instagram lives all the time where I did Q&A. So I didn't put that in my About Me section, but I'm currently training for my 5th marathon, and my 4th Ironman triathlon will be this May. So I just spend a lot of time doing cardio and I get bored. So I used to do Q&As. But then I had some people tell me it made them dizzy, and other people tell me that it made them feel bad that they weren't exercising. So I kind of stopped doing it. But if people started tuning in, I do them again. Okay. So let me go. Oh, good. Fabiola said she also loves the impressionism vibes. It's kind of coming in and out. We're exploring different artistic styles here as we go. Penny asked if I'm going to go to Alaska for the Ironman. No. So I was supposed to do Ironman California this past October. I went up to Sacramento and everything, was standing outside in about 45-degree weather and pouring rain, getting ready to swim when they announced over the intercom that the race was canceled due to severe weather. So we rescheduled for Ironman Tulsa in May. So if any of you are from or around Tulsa, Oklahoma, you have recommendations for me on where we should go eat, let me know. I'm all ears. Okay. So I am in, Fabiola, I'm in the Q&A, and I don't see any questions in the Q&A. So let me know if I got to look somewhere else.
Braden, this is Richard chiming in again. You should be able to see the questions under published.
Oh, okay. There we go. Beautiful. Published. Oh, we got a lot of them. All right. So I will go through these quickly. I will do my best on the Q&A. We got about 20 minutes, right? So it should be good. Okay. Christy says, I'm thinking about starting a new photography business with another person as a partnership, probably starting as an LLC. I have someone helping me with the tax side of things, but what type of things do I need to do legally to set up an LLC? So first of all, Christy, you can join my program. I'll help you with most of that, getting your LLC set up. The LLC itself, not all that complicated, but you want to make sure you set up a multi-member LLC, not a single member LLC. I actually had a client, a student, she had an event rental company in Cincinnati, super, super awesome, but she'd made that mistake. And so we had to do a conversion for her. You want to avoid that. And then also super important, you want to make sure that you have a multi-member operating agreement. So it's like your partnership agreement. It's going to specify how much you're both getting paid, how you're going to take distributions, who has management control, all super important. I do provide a template for that in my program, but typically for partners, I do recommend consulting a locally licensed attorney in your state in case there's any state-specific issues to consider. Okay. Christy asks, what are some pitfalls that course creators tend to fall into legally? I just started creating courses this year. I'm used to working with contracts as a photographer, but is there an equivalent in the course creation education world? Yes. So Christy, this is something you can message me on Instagram about too. I love course creation. If any of you follow the wonderful and fabulous Amy Porterfield, I am a past student of hers, and I was an ambassador in her Digital Course Academy Facebook group for 2 cycles of her program. So I'm pretty used to working with course creators at this point as well. With course creation, you want to have those web terms of service. So the checkbox we mentioned earlier, a privacy policy as well. Make sure you consider things like, do you have any guarantees, promises, or refund policies? Super important. All right. I'm going to flash back over to our chat to see how we're doing over here. Okay. So Aaron, I see your question. Now I'm going to, sorry, it's a little bit contradictory, but now I'm going to ask all of you to post your questions in the Q&A just so I can make sure that I go in order and start with the ones that came in first. Okay. Laura says, thank you for this webinar. You're welcome. You're in Washington State. Your question is, are there any laws or case law requiring business owners to carefully vet third-party vendors? So I saw your question ahead of time, Laura, and I wish I had a better answer for you. I really don't know. This is a fairly novel area of the law. My assumption, and again, keyword assumption, would be that if you had an issue, it would kind of be on them for their breach. Definitely doesn't hurt to look into this. If you have, what I would be curious about, and this is what I invite people to do, I also have a Facebook group called Braden's Besties. You can go and join. Is whenever you have questions like this, if you've done any research on your own and you found a helpful article, I would encourage you to link it in the group. And then if you have specific questions about the article, I'll read it myself and share what my thoughts are on that. So let me know kind of what you looked into so far, what you've learned. All right, Christy, a few more questions. If you have an ongoing relationship with someone, private photo editor here, where is it limited to a specific day of work? What would your contract need? Is a contract needed for every session, or just some type of defining terms and expectations? Christy, that's a very, very loaded question. Okay. So as far as just the contractual relationship between the two of you, you can do whatever you want. You can put whatever you want on the contract. Under independent contractor laws, though, now if you're in a state that follows the ABC test like California, we do have some rules on what your contract needs to specify. And like specifically for event contracts, I now recommend a contract for every event. Whether you're going to do a separate contract for every kind of gallery you edit, I know that's a pain in the ass. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea if you're in a state with strict contractor laws, but lots to consider. Ooh, I almost knocked over my coffee. That was scary. I already bought a new computer this year or last year when I spilled water on it. I'm going to be careful. Okay. Do you need insurance if your risk is super low? As an editor, I don't have a risk of injuring anyone since I don't go on location. Also, I don't work with raw files, so there's no risk of losing images. You know, that's a tough question to answer. It's kind of like saying, like, do I really need car insurance if I never ever drive? Like, I just work at home. I only use my car for emergencies. It's one of those things like, you know, do I really need health insurance? Do I really need any kind of insurance? The question is, you know, the chance that you're going to use it are really, really low, but do you want to risk it? Now, of course, car insurance, we all legally have to have. Health insurance, different story. Business insurance, your chances of needing to use it are a lot lower. But I'm a big advocate of business insurance because if you ever do get sued, oftentimes your insurance will step in and pay your legal fees and your attorney fees. And that's a huge benefit that a lot of us don't think about. Okay, Laura, you said you use Pixieset and GoDaddy. I have no idea what cookies they might use on the back end of their platforms. I have not intentionally added any cookie pixel tracking, Google tracking, etc. on my end, but can't say for sure what cookies might still be in use. Therefore, I don't know how to identify the cookies used in my website's privacy. Okay, so for this kind of thing, again, these kind of website privacy things, not something I've spent much time researching, so I can't give you too many specifics. But generally, I'll say in your privacy policy, you keep it simple, right? So say, you know, there may be cookie tracking or, you know, whatever the language is. You don't need to give like a whole lot of specifics about that sort of thing. Okay, Mac, you said, do you have any recommendations for wording maternity, paternity leave in contracts? Making sure we get time off and set the right expectations to not lose clients and maybe get paid. At least get clients covered during the timeout. So Mac, I need to know specifically what kind of contract you're talking about. So generally when we think about maternity, paternity leave, we're thinking about an employment contract for our employer. But I'm guessing you might just be talking about, well, what happens if I have a client I'm supposed to like shoot a wedding and one of us gets pregnant? And that kind of a case and that type of contract, I would make sure you have a really solid substitution clause, which allows you to find a substitute photographer or professional to step in your place without any penalty on your behalf. Okay. Typically the language we use is a substitute with like experience and like style, right? So if you're like a dark and moody photographer, they wouldn't want you to substitute a different photographer with like a vastly different aesthetic because they hired you because they like your aesthetic, right? Okay. And I think you were a photographer. Maybe did I just make that up? I don't know. Okay, Kathy. Would love to learn more about copyright. For example, my understanding is that photographers own the rights to the photos he or she takes. However, if they take a picture of something that's copyrighted, how does that work? So yeah, you are right. Copyright is established as soon. I'm going to turn off my screen share. There we go. Okay, copyright is established as soon as you create like a creative work is the language that we use. But once you register that work federally, then that gives you a lot of other protections. So just a clarification there. As far as taking a photo of something that's already copyrighted, I don't know. That would be an issue I'd kind of like refer out to one of my intellectual property friends. Does the contract vault have a contract for officiants? It does not, but I could add one. So if you buy it, send me a message and I will add that to my list of templates I'll be adding this week. How does that sound? I'm assuming like the officiant contract would be pretty simple. The wedding planning contract tends to be like the very, very complicated one. Theirs are like 15 pages because they have all sorts of stuff to consider. Okay, Kathy says another question regarding contracts. If someone like a parent is paying for the service, but they are not named in the contract, how does that person have a say in the details of the contract? They don't. So we just want to say that they don't. Is there any verbiage that can be added to the contract so the line isn't blurred? Yes. So I have a provision that I provide called a financier provision. And basically it just says, we don't care who's giving us money. Our clients are the people listed on the contract. So just because mom or grandma or friend or cousin or whomever is going to give me money doesn't mean that they're my client. I like to go a step further and actually ask. I like to tell you all to ask your couples, your client, whomever is the actual client, to pay you. You can't really force them to do that, but say, you know, hey, you're my client. It's my preference that the person who wants to pay for this give you the money and then you pay me. That makes it super clear. But if they don't want to do that, there's some other things that you can consider. Okay, I think we got a few more. Aaron says, previously in the Q&A, you mentioned your previous client who needed to change from a solo to multi-LLC. I just want to make sure I understood correctly. Is this multi-member LLC only important for people who have partners? Yes. So if you have a business partner and you're both owners of the LLC, you need to have a multi-member LLC so that you're both listed on the documents as co-owners. And then everyone else would have a single member LLC. That's correct. Because what happened in this circumstance is they were true 50-50 business partners, but they'd accidentally formed a single member LLC. So the partner's business name was not on any of the legal documents. So if they, ever got into a fight or anything like that, it's going to be a problem when they have a legal situation and their name's not on it. I just moved my microphone because I thought maybe it was auto-focusing on the microphone, but maybe not. I just rearranged all my furniture 2 days ago in my office, so it probably is picking up something else. Rebecca asks, when would you need a DBA? Kind of a complicated question. It's not, it is and it isn't. I have a blog post on this as well. I think it's literally titled, Do You Need a DBA? So go read that for sure. But typically you need a DBA if you're a sole proprietor and your business name does not fully identify the first and last name of the business owner, okay? Or if you have an LLC and you are operating under a name other than the LLC name, okay? So Penny says, I've heard I should never put a client into my car. Yes, correct. My brides and grooms come into a port where I pick them up and drive them around during our shoots. Penny, best advice for you, contact your insurance company. Tell them what your general practice is. Ask them, am I covered? Is this a car insurance issue? Is it a business liability insurance issue? I'm not really sure. Typically, we recommend that you don't do that because you don't want to be liable for them in the case of an accident. But again, it's something that you want to make sure you're covered for. This is good advice for all of you. Anytime you have an issue like this where you're like, oh, it's potential liability, contact your insurance company. Oftentimes, we're hesitant to do that because anytime that we contact our insurance company, we imagine our policy is going to go up, our payments are going to go up, but you'd rather pay an extra $10 or $20 a month knowing that you're covered for that kind of a thing, rather than in the future you getting sued and your insurance company saying, we don't cover that. You did not put it on the initial questionnaire when we got your insurance policy together. Okay, Jamie says, other than name of business or product names, are there other instances where trademarks are a good idea? Okay, other than the name of a business or a product name, that's pretty much it. You can also trademark slogans, right? You can trademark logos. So think about the Nike swoosh, the Apple logo, all of those things are trademarks. You can also, this is kind of complicated, but you can trademark jingles. You can trademark smells. Again, not my area of expertise, so I don't know how all of that works. You can also trademark, I think the Tiffany blue color is, do they call that a trademark or is that, I think packaging might be something else. Anyway, we can get into really into the weeds with some complicated stuff, but that's when those companies are paying big dollars to really sophisticated law firms to get their intellectual property together. For most of us, we're going to trademark smaller stuff. So I was going to see My book is right back there. You can see it like hovering above my head. It's all blurred out so you can't see it. But Unfuck Your Biz is a trademark that I own. So I own it under the classification of education for my podcast and for my book. I'm currently working on a trademark for another name, TBD on that one. I don't want to give it away. But, you know, we don't typically have to go wild with those. Okay. What do we have in the chat box? Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading now if you hear silence. Penny says, can we put an addendum in a wedding contract about the car as a means of protecting myself? You could. I've never seen that. You could, but I would definitely contact your insurance about it. Christy says you can trademark sounds. Yes. Caitlin James called one of her products developed and someone had trademarked the sound develop. So they had to change it. That's interesting. I have to look into that. Okay. So that is everything. I think I'll hand it.
Braden, I think there's one final question that just came into the Q&A, and I think it'd be a nice place to end as well.
Okay, so final question. Oh, so from Aaron. Okay.
Yep.
How long do most people usually stay in Profit RX? Also, can people sign up in any month, and does the cart close at any point? Great question, Aaron. Cart does not close. It is always open. I launched the program in November. So I was at Wedding MBA. I actually launched it there. We currently have 84 people in the program. All of them, it's a 10 module program. And everyone right now is between modules 1 and 4. It's supposed to take about a month to go through each module. So it's about a 10 to 12 month long program. We cover in the following order. We cover quarterly taxes, LLC and S-corp formation, contracts and insurance, cash flow, then bookkeeping, and then we get into intellectual property, hiring, personal finance, and then systems. And then number 10 is called maintenance. So that's how the process works. It's a $75 a month membership. I actually just had my group call with my members before this. A few of them were working on contracts, a few on cash flow. One was setting up her payroll for her S-corp. So that's the nice thing is it's kind of like evergreen. It's always open so people can come in and get to work on an as needed basis. There we go.
All right. Thank you to everyone who attended. I think that wraps up our session for today. I'll leave the chat open for just a second so people can send their thanks to Braden. But I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Oh, here, I'll put this link in here real quick. Oh, actually, it's just www.theprofitrx.com is the sales page. All right. Thank you, everybody.